Hi guys, my name is Girish, the host for Back2Basics, and other Back2Basics. So today we're going to talk to you about, breakthrough, we're going to talk about high five, or we're going to talk about breakthrough. How about that? And then we're going to talk about more breakthrough, and then more breakthrough, and then what that whole thing is all about. But there's one thing that is very, very true. This person gives a lot of high fives to a lot of different people and helps out a lot of different ways, in many different ways. And today he's a person who's on my show, and we're going to make a breakthrough on this show. I hope that makes sense. Matt, how are you? And thanks for coming to Back2Basics.
I'm great. Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you, thank you. So before we get into the breakthroughs and more breakthroughs and more breakthroughs, what does Back2Basic mean to you?
It's about making things more simple.
Okay.
There was a time at one point where things were very simple in our lives, in our business, in our personal lives, and then they got complicated. To me, back to basics is simplifying things.
Yeah, I think that's what the Back2Basics is all about, because we try to, we humans have a tendency to make things complicated. And what do we need to do to make it simple? And I think that's what I'm trying to do on my show. So thank you so much for that. So Matt, again, thank you again for coming on my show and making this brighter for me and joyful. And we're going to have a great time today, I hope. So tell me how this whole thing started with this breakthrough champion. Can you explain that to us?
Sure. So I owned a digital marketing agency for 18 years. And in that time frame, um, you know, I decided that I didn't want to do it anymore.
Mm.
But before I left the agency and sold it, I decided to become a professional speaker. And so I ramped up the professional speaking business. And at the time, my goal was to help people transform their lives and have breakthroughs themselves, whatever that meant. And I thought I was going to be a motivational speaker, right? And I quickly learned that that's a buzzword that nobody searches for or hires in the industry. As it ended up being, I became a more content-driven speaker about very specific things. But those things are directly relevant to having personal and business breakthroughs in ways that people generally don't think about. So that's what a breakthrough champion is all about.
So do you think this is a new buzzword, which is breakthrough instead of motivational speaker?
No, I think that, so in the speaking world, it's professional speaker is kind of how it's referred to now. And that's a status that's attained with the National Speakers Association by achieving a certain amount of revenue and or a certain number of speaking opportunities and gigs. I think the problem is motivational speaker became a buzzword when Chris Farley was doing the motivational speaker thing, And so then people started Googling that and everybody thought, well, I can be a motivational speaker. But the funny thing is at the end of the day, motivation is great, but what people want is results. What people need is to take action and to empower change. And when people in an audience start to change, they start to get results. And that's ultimately what the breakthrough is. And so I had named my company Breakthrough Champion. And I also have a background in coaching football, both youth and semi-pro. And so it was this idea of winning at the game of life. And that's where it all came from.
Thank you so much for that. So the examples that you give, is it more sports related or business related when you start coaching people, and when you
it's
give
much more business related.
your motivational speaker, as you say?
Yeah, it's much more business related because many people can comprehend that a lot more than some sort of sport that they either didn't play or they aren't necessarily familiar with, right? If I say football, sometimes people think of soccer. Right. It depends on how you interpret that word. and where you're from. And so for me, it's always the case studies and the scenarios and the stories around um, business ownership that help uplift. And what I try to do is help inspire people to realize that that getting referrals, because my expertise is in the world of word of mouth marketing and referrals,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that getting referrals isn't it's a simple process, but it's not easy.
Mm.
And so what I mean by that is it's simple in the sense that most people understand the concept by which I bring to the table.
Mm.
Which if you've heard anything about referrals, is that um, people do business with who they know, like, and trust.
That's right.
And I've always believed that that isn't necessarily true, that people do business with who they know, like, trust, and care about.
Mm.
And the caring concept is an often overlooked concept of relationships.
Mm.
And so to understand that, once I share my concept of caring in 5 or 10 minutes, people go, oh yeah, no, I understand that. It's pretty simple to understand that.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
But it's not easy to implement.
Mm.
And because it requires you to think in a different way, it requires you to think about other people before you ever think about yourself.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you.
And that's a very hard thing.
Yeah, thank you so much, Matt, for that. So before we get into too much detail of the clients that you help out, okay, just briefly, what are the top 3 things people they come to you for help?
So the number one thing is people come to me to get more referrals in the service-based business that they're in,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, the second thing is they come to me for sort of business growth,
Mm-hmm.
right? So they hear that I sold a company and they're like, I want to do that. And then the third thing they come to me for is what I define as freedom, which is this idea that I do what I want, where I want, how I want, and I control my calendar and my business. It does not control me.
Mm-hmm.
And so they see me doing activities that are not business related,
Mm-hmm.
and they say, I want to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I help them implement systems and processes in their business so that they can have freedom, or so that they can sell a business, or so that they can get more referrals.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much for that, Matt. So, when you started this whole thing, and I think according to your bio, I think you started back in 2002. Now,
Mm-hmm.
how is it different 20 years later? Is that still the same thing, or has that kind of changed over in time?
Well, it's interesting because I think things have changed since 2002, right?
Of
We
course.
didn't have smartphones back then.
Of course.
We didn't have iPads. Um, and back then, when I had a website company, nobody really knew how to build one.
Mm.
And now there's apps and tools that you can drag and drop and have your own website in under 30 minutes, pretty much. So things have changed from a technology standpoint, but that's where your theme of back to basics comes back into play,
Mm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they have changed, but they haven't.
Mm.
Because at the end of the day, all of this stuff I talk about, all of it is relationship based.
Mm.
If you want to sell a business, you're going to get more money for your business if you sell it to somebody you know and have a relationship.
Yeah.
If you want referrals, it's relationship based. And if you want freedom, that's relationship based too, because there's a relationship with yourself that you have to prioritize over money, over fame, over success. That's where that comes into play. It's all relationship driven.
But that goes in hand the way you explained it just now, doesn't it? I mean, it kind of goes in circle. I mean, the way you're explaining.
Yeah. So that's how, I have all 3 of those things, right? I've sold 2 businesses. One I sold after 11 months. I had built the thing up so fast and then just sold it because I didn't want to run it anymore.
Mm.
The other one I sold after 16 years.
Mm.
So, and I get referrals. I do the work. It's what I live every day. I put other people first, and I have everything driven around this idea of freedom.
Mm.
So literally, I've had clients tell me that they'll pay me double if I schedule a call every week Tuesday at 10 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
And I refuse. And you can pay me 5 times. I'm not going to take the money.
Sure.
That's not important to me. What is important to me is that when I look 3 to 4 weeks out on my calendar, I don't want it blocked by client calls.
Mm.
That causes me anxiety. That is not freedom to me.
That's right.
And I'm not interested in that. And so money doesn't drive me.
Mm.
My focus with regard to money is that I just don't want to go backwards.
Yeah, of course not.
I don't want to go back to where I came from. I came from poverty. I don't want to go back there. So as long as I'm making enough to not go back there, I'm good. I'm driving on the freedom side of things, and I'm doing things like, going boating in the middle of the week and driving my side-by-side ATV in the woods.
Of course. Of course.
Those types of things that I enjoy that are my hobbies.
So I think it's safe to say, Matt, I think you're looking for more comfortable life versus nor less nor more. Is that correct?
Yeah, and legitimately simple. A simple lifestyle that's not complicated, doesn't have any drama. Like, people with drama don't stay in my life long at all. Yeah. Right? I just don't want that.
Of course.
And to me, that is in fact back to basics, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for that. So Matt, before we get into the other item we're going to talk about, which is your book and everything else there, in the beginning of the call and in the beginning of the interview that we had so far, I've asked you, what is your back to basic moment? I'm going to ask you, what is your breakdown moment? Because you know what? In order to have a breakdown, you need to have a breakthrough. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, my breakdown moment was Labor Day of 1997. Let me step back a second. I'm the youngest of 3 boys, the first to graduate high school and the only one not to go to prison. I was fortunate enough to attend a private tuition-free boarding school located in Hershey, Pennsylvania, that was founded by the guy that created the chocolate bar. Most people have no idea that this school exists, but every time you buy Hershey's chocolate, the profits from that chocolate company go to this school. And it was founded by Milton Hershey because he and his wife, Catherine, could not have children. So they started an orphanage. And when I attended the school, my parents were divorced. And so I qualified, low income, and took the test, got into school, and I stayed there for 7 years. And it changed my life. And I could say that was the breakthrough, but it really wasn't. Right? For me, the breakthrough was, I graduated from there in 91, but in 1997, I sold my car on the streets of Washington, D.C. for $50. That's all the money I had in my pocket, $50. The next day, I filed bankruptcy. And I started over in Massachusetts, where I had met a girl. And I moved there, and I started over. I got a job working in a mailroom at an insurance company in Worcester, Massachusetts. I took the second shift. I worked as many hours as I possibly could at this insurance company. I moved up the ranks over the next 2 years, and eventually moved out of the company and found another job that paid more money, and I just kept working on myself. And that was in 97 that I made that move. And then I started this part-time web company in 2002. And in 2003, Labor Day of 2003, I got laid off. And I thought it was the worst thing that probably ever happened to me. But it turned out it was the best thing. I took a contractor job with the company Lycos.com, the search engine. I worked for them for about 15 months as a contractor. And in 2005, went full-time with my web agency, and I never looked back. I've been self-employed ever since. And for me, that breakdown moment was when that guy bought my car for $50, but I tried to sell it for $500. I literally was at the entrance to a junkyard where everybody was coming in, buying parts for their cars and stuff, and everybody that came in, I asked them if they wanted to buy my car. I just stood there with the title in hand, and it was a little VW Golf. I barely fit in the thing. and nobody would buy it. But I had to leave. I had to drive back to Massachusetts. So I finally got a guy that said he'd take it, and he didn't want to give me much, and he gave me $50 for the car.
You know, there, what I've learned, and there's a quote at the end of the episode, and you got to listen to that quote because that quote actually kind of resonates with me and you, of course. But there are plenty of breakdowns in everyone's life to become a breakthrough. And I totally believe that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think in your life, I think you have just explained that you have at least maybe 5 to 6 breakdowns till you get to that breakthrough. That's how I looked at it.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if you agree or disagree,
So
but that's
I still have breakdowns.
of course,
They're just at different levels, right?
of course, of
You know,
course,
I had that woman I moved up there for. I got married to her, and then it fell apart, and we got divorced. That's a
course.
breakdown,
of course.
you know. But it's also life, and so there's one thing I know that I bring to the table with all of my clients and in all of my speaking opportunities that I have is that Breakthrough Champion, my business, does not dwell on what didn't work.
Hmm.
What we do is we learn from that and we move forward. We're
Yeah.
putting one foot in front of another.
Sure.
We don't look back and say, woe is me. There is time to reflect for sure, but that reflection is about lessons. What did we learn? What did we miss? What were the red flags that we didn't pay attention to? And how can we be better next time? Creating breakthroughs is about not allowing that wall that's in front of you to stop you. It's about figuring out whether you're going around, going up and over, going through it, getting the assistance of other people to help you get around that or through it or over it. It's about understanding what the obstacle is in front of you and figuring out how to make it work for you.
That's right.
That's what breakthroughs are all about.
Yeah, Matt. Thank you again for that. So now, can we talk about your book, if that's okay with you?
Absolutely.
So the book name is what? Let's put it this way: High Five.
The High Five Effect.
Uh-huh.
How to do business with people who bring you joy.
Yes. So let me explain that. And I've not got the book yet, and I've not had the pleasure, and I do apologize, but I will buy it soon as we're done with this call. But I will make some arrangements to ship the book to you, and then you can ship it back. So I need some signature from you, because definitely you are a person to get in touch with. But what is this whole book about? I mean, it's kind of explanatory from the title.
Yeah.
But
So here's what happened, Girish. What happened was 3 years ago, I wrote another book about referrals, and I was traveling the country talking about how to get more word of mouth referrals and how to care about other people. And the closing component of that talk was this idea that I believe you should just really hang around awesome people to the point where you can just high five anyone.
Sure.
That it brings you so much joy and happiness. And it's not about what business you get out of it, but it's about the people you surround yourself with, kind of like what Jim Rohn said, right?
That's right.
And so I would tell the story. I would say to an audience of 1,000 people at a hotel convention hall, I would say, look, I would encourage you that when you get up from this section today, that you high five the person next to you. And that when you walk out in that hallway in the hotel, as you're headed over to lunch or whatever, just high five anyone in the hallway. They'll have no idea what you're doing, but they'll high five you back. They will. And even now post-COVID, Girish, if they don't high five you because of contact, watch their face. I guarantee you they'll smile. That's what the high five effect does. And ultimately, shouldn't we be able to walk down any hallway in any business in this country, or frankly in this world, and just high five anybody because that's how we feel about life? And so that's what it was about. And the premise of the book, real simple. I feel like people have started the business and left the corporate world because they wanted 3 things. More money, more time, and more freedom. And in the first 5 years, they don't get any of those things. And so this book helps them achieve that in the first 5 years.
Yeah, thank you so much, Matt. So in order to give a high five to someone, you need to be more extrovert. But
No.
a person who's introvert, they don't usually high five everybody.
Well,
So how do you
this is true.
So explain how to help people who are introverts to be extroverts or to give a
Yeah.
high five. So explain that.
Okay. So the first thing is, let's be clear about the definitions of introvert and extrovert because they're
Please.
commonly misused.
Totally.
In the world of introvert and extrovert, those are definitions about how people gain their energy. So
That's
extroverts gain their energy from others, introverts gain their energy from being alone, and you can be an extroverted introvert like me. So I gain my energy from being at a networking event and in a group of people, and then I am drained because of all the work I do that I need to recoup in my hotel room by myself alone. So I'm an extroverted introvert. People often think an introvert is just a wallflower, somebody in an event that doesn't, communicate with
does
other people.
communicate.
No, that's just a shy person,
Hmm.
right? So they're commonly misconfused. But what often happens, I think, is that what really you're asking is how does an individual who's not always comfortable starting a conversation or being the person to throw up a high five, how do they become more of that person? Well, first off, they have to want that. They have to want that engagement and that contact and that conversation. There are a lot of people that don't want that.
Sure.
Um, and in the book, The High Five Effect, yes, that's a physical high five, but I talk about it very early on that it can even be a figurative one,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So getting a person to smile because you're like throwing up a high five is this I that's a high five returned to you as well, even if they don't hit your hand, right?
Right.
And I think that it's about a level of joy and excitement around
Hmm.
business. And so if you think of that person, that's the life of the party,
Hmm.
they always bring excitement
Sure.
and they're funny and they make people laugh. And that isn't for everyone. But many times having someone like that at a place is a great addition. And if that's you, then great. If it's not you, then just smile, make eye contact with people. That's the biggest thing. People
Hmm.
tend to avoid that. And in these networking events, these Chamber of Commerce events, these business events, if you simply make eye contact with people, someone will come over and introduce themselves, shake your hand, and you'll have a business conversation.
Hmm.
And it really is about eye contact. And it can feel awkward at times. If you're not accustomed to it, it can feel awkward.
Hmm.
Um, But one of the examples I love to tell people is when you're in a room of 20 or 30 people, just lock eyes with somebody across the room, start walking over to them and hold your hand up like there's a high five.
Hmm.
Like you're ready to give them a high five. And almost all the time, 90% of the time, they're going to give you a high five.
Hmm.
Now, COVID has changed that a little bit
That's right.
because people are a little sketchy about the whole hand touching thing. But again, even in that scenario, they might pull their hand back because they don't want a high five, or they may step away and give you like an air high five, but it achieves the same result. It produces this adrenaline and this dopamine hit of joy. And that is a feeling that we don't have enough in business.
Hmm. I think it's the same thing as a high five or a fist punch, right?
Yeah.
Nowadays, I think that's what they do nowadays. So thank you again, Matt, for bringing this a different version of introvert and extrovert, because there's a lot of people they explain it, the way you explained it is exactly how people are thinking nowadays. That introverts are a person who's just alone, but it's actually not the other way around. So thank you again for defining that into this back to basic show. So
Yeah.
before you leave today, Matt, do you have any last words to back to basics and what are your experience so far on the show?
Yeah. I mean, I think that in this go fast food society that we live in,
Yeah.
sometimes it pays to just take a moment and sit still, slow down, let time pass, and get back to basics. I recently did um, a digital detox trip to the Grand Canyon on an ATV.
Hmm.
3.5, 4 days without my phone. They actually take your phone when you arrive at the place and they put it in a box and lock it. And it was one of the most memorable experiences of my life. Time literally stood still when we were out there. We camped out overnight. We were 10 and 20 feet from the edge of the north rim of the Grand Canyon.
Hmm.
And we watched the sunset, and then we watched it rise. And we had a campfire in the dark over the Grand Canyon. It was just amazing. And these are things that we just, as business people and people in our lives, we just don't do enough of.
Hmm.
And you would be surprised how recharged you are after you just do that. A digital detox, getting back to basics as though we didn't have a computer in our pocket. That will give you a reset that you never thought you could get.
Hmm. Yeah, thank you again.
As I always tell people, Girish,
Yeah.
if you can channel this energy in the right way,
Hmm.
you can get everything you want in life.
That's right.
And that's why I always tell people, don't forget to live happy, smile a lot, and high five everyone around you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Matt, for giving me a high five through the regular virtual call that we're having today. But it's amazing chatting with you, and hopefully we'll connect and collaborate in other projects and other amazing stuff that we're going to do together. So thank you again, Matt, for coming here on my show.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. So guys, we spoke with Matt today, and we talked about the basics of high five and the basics of craziness of just saying hi to people. There's no need of like sitting down and not talking to people, not chatting with people. I think that's what Matt is trying to do, is to motivate you. Motivate is the new, what is it? The breakthrough, right? I think that's what he said. So here's a quote of the day, and I told Matt to stay here to listen to this quote. And here's the quote of the day from Back to Basics. Breakdowns create breakthroughs. Breakthroughs create more breakthroughs. So you break down for another breakthrough. If you're about to break, go for broke. That's what it is. There's too many breakdowns and too many brokes, but that's what it is. Guys, take care, God bless, and listen to me. Everything in life goes back to basics, and that's what we did today, guys. Guys, please comment all the comments on my episodes. Good, bad, ugly, either way, it'll make my show stronger day by day and week by week, because we are releasing every day of the week. And there are 3 things in this show which is awesome, which is the content, the guest, and definitely the host. Guys, take care, God bless, and I will see you next week. Next week's episode on Back to Basics.
Trust of endless referrals and put it into a parable. So the first thing I asked myself was really, what's the basic, talking about basics, what's the basic element of that person who can very quickly and sustainably create those know, like, and trust relationships? And what it comes down to is they're givers. They're always looking to give value, provide immense value to others. Okay, not in a self-sacrificial way, but in a way that builds everyone in the process. So coming up with the go giver, is kind of easy. But I'll tell you the best thing that I did for that book, and you know this person who I'm going to talk about, and that was asking John David Mann, who at the time was the editor-in-chief of a magazine I used to write articles for. And John is a brilliant writer. Okay, I'm a how-to guy. I'm, step by step, step 1, step 2, step 3. John's a brilliant storyteller, writer. And so I asked John if he would be the lead writer and storyteller of this book that I had an idea for. So he was very busy, and it wasn't something he could just